Good evening, dear friends. We are in the 21st video of this series.
Good evening, everyone. Greetings from Adana.
Yes, let me start reading from where we left last week. In the path of evolution, described by sublime principles, each organism has some definite duties. All components of that organism, by joining forces, according to their power and merit, are obliged to do these duties. No organ or organizer should abandon or neglect their share of duty. However, the refining experiences of spirits yet at the initial stages of the hydrogen cosmos have not advanced sufficiently to comprehend these truths and imperatives. This state is thoroughly lacking even in the ones which are more or less developed. The ones at this stage have not yet attained the comprehension of duty that carries the share of universe responsibility to various degrees. Because of this, duties of the governance mechanism cannot yet be left to these beings. Therefore, these are not included in great duty organizations. This is a work only belonging to beings involved with plans of duty, which are at more advanced stages of evolution. Nevertheless, superior beings, which are obliged out of duty to help the evolutions of these non-comprehending, even semi-comprehending beings at levels below, help them with the imperative acts which are their share for the preparations for the plan of duty. For this, various ensembles, groupings occur among them in order to prepare for the future organizations. And the beings in duty consign these groups and gatherings to preliminary work, conditionally, which is in some degree automatic or more or less comprehending. As these develop and expand their comprehension, they start to gain freedoms that increase accordingly. And meanwhile, they are gradually given intuitions into the great organization systems. So, this is how accrued matter, upon entering the stage of being and evolving there for a while, and from the moment it starts to build a plant body, entering into an ensemble and starting a new cycle of development, likewise that being starts, as a consequence of a very long evolution and in accordance with the maturation of its sense of duty, enters the path of comprehending its obligations of duty and gaining an intuition of responsibility. And thus, it commences to intuit vast and wide paths leading to organizations of the great plan of duty.
Now, in this passage, there are knowledge the book previously had started to mention. First of all, we must discuss this. I read, however, the refining experiences of spirits yet at the initial stages of the hydrogen cosmos have not advanced sufficiently to comprehend these truths and imperatives. This state is thoroughly lacking even in the ones which are more or less developed. The ones at this stage have not yet attained the comprehension of duty that carries the share of universe responsibility to various degrees. That is, for the beings that are still striving in the hydrogen cosmos, there is no obligation assigned to them by the plan of duty. Except a very exceptional state, we will read about it in the further pages.
And in this passage, the book explains the characteristics of the plan of duty and why it should be as such, and why we cannot be included in the cadres of duty while we are in the hydrogen cosmos, or why we cannot advance towards the higher duties.
Yes, exactly. This is the case. No matter how high vibrational emotions, thoughts, intuitions a person has, the structure of the world matter is not suitable for entering the plan of duty. That is, the matter a human being is used is not compatible with the matter the plan of duty utilizes. Because there are too many decelerating factors in the world matter. For example, what happens when we apply force to an object? Normally, it should move forever at the same speed. However, in our hydrogen cosmos, there is the frictional force and it works in the opposite direction of the applied force and it is directed to stop the movement. And our hydrogen cosmos is full with those kind decelerating influences. I mean, the causes and effects in our hydrogen cosmos are heavily veiled. Without worldly comprehension which is bound to our brain, we cannot go beyond these causes and effects, we cannot reach their true meanings. Let's consider a day we live in, from the moment we wake up and until we go to bed again, which part of the causes and effects of the things we do whole day is entirely understood? I think, none of us can give a clear answer to this question. Consider a housewife. She has to cook to feed the family members. She cooks a meal and family members are fed, and seeing this, she can say yes, I have a command over the cause and effect principle. However, this is a very superficial way of having a command over this. For example, while cooking a meal, that woman does not put all ingredients into the pot right away, doesn't she? I mean, there is a sequence for adding ingredients. Actually, what happens here is that the being experiences the gradual advancement or progress of something. From the perspective of the worldly comprehension, she is just cooking, but what the meaning the being gleans is multifaceted, the necessity of adding the ingredients in a certain sequence, that things advance in a gradual way, that if some ingredients are in harmony with other ingredients or not, that after the dinner is finished, the changes in the woman's mood upon hearing thankful words of her family members. This example is very simple, but please see what leads to which consequences, which causes lead to which effects. Or take the events we encounter in our daily life. To earn money, between certain hours of the day we come and go and do certain things. However, while doing these certain things, what kind of changes, what kind of value differentiations happen within our emotional and mental structure? Or for which changes of equilibrium we are driven or directed to do those certain jobs. See, even within seemingly simple events, we cannot find a possibility of reaching the main principles behind these cause and effect chains, within this world matter. I mean, this is the characteristic of this cosmos, of this stage. Our duty is to learn with our own devices within the matter of this cosmos, but while we are here, it is not possible for us to apply the conditions or to actualize the necessities of the plan of duty. We cannot understand that unity, we cannot reach those cause and effect chains.
Here, what strikes my attention is the sentence you mentioned. The refining experiences of spirits yet at the initial stages of the hydrogen cosmos have not advanced sufficiently to comprehend these truths and imperatives. In our previous videos, as we read and discussed the amorphous matter and the initial hydrogen atom, we had discussed the term of novice spirits. The book described these spirits as novice because in those early stage of the universe, spirits were inexperienced about the matter substance of our universe. Just as described here in this passage, in the initial stages of our universe, spirits don't have yet sufficient amount of refining experiences to understand this imperative of duty. Even the more or less developed spirits don't have the comprehension of duty. So, this refining experiences should be gained by a three-sided relation among spirit, being and matter. At these initial stages, to become an organizer of an organ is too much for a being, so a being must start from the simplest steps, and we read here that it is a plant cell. And we already discussed that in a plant cell, there is an experience in a very primitive level of instincts. So, each being has to start from smallest duties for gaining experience with matter. To ensure the working of the greater organization without a glitch and always be in an equilibrium, a being is directed to be included in small ensembles, small groupings as a preliminary work only after almost eternal stages of gaining more and more experience. And even these works are automatic in some degrees, more or less comprehending. And we may think that a journey of progress starting from a plant cell and arriving at a human body is an immense achievement, but still, when compared to the system in the plan of duty, all of these are still in microscale. In a way, we are doing preliminary work for preparing to the plan of duty, but because our comprehension is automatic or semi-comprehending, all those preliminary works we do is directed by some automatisms and under the governance of the superior beings, superior systems.
Yes, and here, we read this. As these develop and expand their comprehension, they start to gain freedoms that increase accordingly. And meanwhile, they are gradually given intuitions into the great organization systems. Last week, before ending our video, there was a good question coming from a friend, about, where is free will in this system, and we had tried our best to answer him. We had said the free will increases in ratio with the widening of comprehensions, these two advance in tandem. And here, we read that, as these develop and expand their comprehension, they start to gain freedoms that increase accordingly. That is, as you just said, the novice spirits, when they connected to matter but they were unable to influence it, only they could get impressions from the developing matter. Year after the state of being, and when the being was able to build and utilize a human body, the being started to acquire freedoms, even though automatic at first and then semi-comprehending. The being starts to encounter the knowledge of you reap what you sow. And in this paragraph, what especially strikes my attention is this word. Responsibility. The meaning of this word should not be underrated. It is very, very important, dear friends. Responsibility means considering oneself as responsible for others, considering and thinking that one has duties to do for others. And this other may be another human being. May be an animal, may be a plant. This meaning may be encompassing all biological or non-biological matter. As you know, the concept of responsibility is gaining communal, even global meaning nowadays when we see the climate agreements the countries sign or don't sign. As this concept of responsibility grows within an individual human being, it gains the meaning of giving a helping hand to others in need. And we know very well that we have two sides. We have intuition of duty, but we also have earthly cravings, selfishness, or ego, the self. At first, when we help others in need, we want this to be known. But gradually, as we add values to the side of intuition of duty within us, maybe after many lifetimes later, we reach a state of helping. As this saying goes, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And at the final stage regarding the concept of responsibility, well, if our friends read the spiritual communiqués given by the Plan of the Faithful, they may remember this sentence: one should die in helping and be born in duty. If our friends think deeply on this sentence, they can gain many insights. Surely, what needs to die is the egoistical side of us. So, yes, the final stage of the meaning of responsibility is this: one should die in helping and be born in duty. So, what we encounter in the plan of duty is the adaptation of the comprehensions to the necessities by their own effort and will. We had mentioned many times that ferment of the being is comprehension. The being is comprehension and has a magnetic field or a field of influence in ratio with its comprehension. And a being's adaptation to the necessities branching out from the unitary occurs in ratio with its comprehension. And we will read in the further pages of this book that the being does the preliminary work for the plan of duty in the plan of love. Upon entering the plan of love, in this semi-subtle realm, the being grasps a matter which is the most basic earthly craving of that being. Gradually, by making better choices, the being leaves that matter and grasps another matter. Yes, this is the trouble with the hydrogen cosmos. We don't have the ability of changing directions spontaneously, on by our own accord. We only can change direction, going from one reality to another reality by force, by enforcements, by motivations. However, in the levels of the plan of duty this is not the case. There, the being knows how to adapt to a new understanding, to a new necessity, to a new reality with its comprehension. And the matter of the hydrogen cosmos is not suitable to do this. Here, everything happens by forcing.
You already gave this example, but I'd like to dwell a little bit on this saying. Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. This means a good roadmap to the altruism, because what is advised here is to give without expecting something in return, or giving unconditionally. And there are such people who give in secret. We never see them on the news, in the social media, because they don't want to be known. And there are other people who always talk about how charitable they are. They announce themselves. So, we can say that they are rather in the earthly craving side of their own duality unit, but again, things will gradually change for them as well. Because, when I read this book first time, one of the points that influenced me most is this knowledge. The being can advance by choosing from the earthly craving side, yes, of course, through a harder, more suffering way, because the cause and effect chains on that side disrupts the equilibrium, and these need to be restored eventually by more challenging lifetimes. Alright, I continue reading. We have just mentioned automatic duties within a community. Now, we will give further explanation of these automatic activities. On your way back home from shopping, you give the parcels to a porter to carry them to your home. Why does the porter carry them to your home? To help you? No. He has no such concerns. He does this to earn a few pennies from you. So, this is a deed which you make him do automatically. Among various characteristics of automatism, one is, as in this example, to advance someone with some beguiling or diverting compensations for a purpose, which he is unable to understand. Accordingly, a man's advancing automatically along the path of evolution means, for a man who cannot display the power to advance consciously and willingly towards the destination he must reach, ensuring his advancing on the demanded path by either laying down attractive toys before him or waylaying scary or intimidating situations in accordance with his earthly cravings. These deeds, which are orientated to the realization of great purposes, begin with several of such automatisms. And sensual or selfish thoughts and desires that prepare the first steps of this automatism accordingly become the powerful elements of this automatism with their positive or negative functions. As the comprehensions expand and essence knowledge about the cause and effects of the deeds to be done increases, consequences are gradually seen more clearly, and the attractive or scary means of automatism in between cease to function, one by one. A mother no longer has to promise a sweet before washing her child's head. Then, man, by seeing his destination directly and more clearly, has begun to comprehend the attainment of that aim and to believe in its exigency, and has thus gained the intuitions of advancing towards the plan of duty. Indeed, the Earth sphere's presence as a powerful vehicle for evolution, as a perfect preparatory school, is because of this. Because of all kinds of materials of a great automatism, which is constituted with programmed and regulated events, its innumerable components of feelings and earthly cravings compelling the consciousness and comprehensions towards the knowledge of duty exist in the world school. And the beings in duty who oversee the life of the world execute this duty of theirs by utilizing these materials among humans. Therefore, the world, as it prepares plants to the stage of animality and animals to the stage of humanity through various automatisms, is also full of very rich variations which prepare humans to the intuition of the knowledge of duty and of organization systems. Tests, trials, observations, experiences, all bitter and sweet feelings complexes, various appearances of sanctions preached by religions such as heaven, hell, afterlife, etc., are orientated towards the purpose of preparing humans for the comprehension and consciousness of the great, cosmos-wide deeds which they are obliged to undertake in the universe. Ensuring that mankind learns the true values of world events in the face of the causality principle, and mankind's own state and behaviors in the face of these values, to adapt themselves accordingly and thus to prepare themselves for the knowledge of duty and organization discipline is one of the essential functions of the life of the world. Only the ones who have attained the aim as the result of this function, and who have embraced the obligation of the deeds they will do in universe, can sever their relations to the world. Yes, another long passage, but how rich in meanings.
Yes. The book gives this example of a porter carrying parcels for a few pennies, to explain the progress in the mechanism of conscience the human beings should make starting from the earthly craving side automatically toward the intuition of duty semi-comprehendingly. Yes, this starts with the earthly cravings, and we know very well that it has many levels in itself. First, expecting something in return. Well, after all, this is an inseparable part of our life on earth. All of us must expect something in return so we can maintain our biological existence. Thinking otherwise would be illogical. However, as the human beings gain experience and widen their comprehensions, they begin to understand that this is not the one and only reality of life. This desire of earning money may be coming from a very crude desire, that is, quite selfish, for example, like to acquire great wealth, material richness. Or this desire of earning money may be because of sustaining a responsibility taken on, and here, we read this example of Porter. And I see a stronger example of this in the news about the hiring miners for coal mines. Let's say 100 miners are needed for a mine, but thousands of people apply for this arduous job. And under which conditions? People over 50 years old, knowing that soon they will get lung cancer, apply to be miners. And why? Because the responsibilities they feel for their families, loved ones, etc. And connecting this to another sentence we read in this passage. Innumerable components of feelings and earthly cravings compelling the consciousness and comprehensions towards the knowledge of duty exist in the world school. That is, the wealth of this world school regarding emotional and mental richness is so abundant. I mean, someone wants more material wealth for continuing the family name and legacy, another one has to work harder for his or her responsibility for family members, for others' development. Well, within the mechanism of conscience, as we start form the earthly cravings and progress toward the intuition of duty, the true wealth emerges by some waver, some forsaking, sacrificing some earthly cravings. In our daily life we term such acts divine or spiritual. We need to learn forsaking. For example, in the religious teachings, fasting for a certain period of time or giving out a certain portion of their annual income for the others in need are commanded. As humans practice as such, they gradually leave the narrow circle of selfish needs and begin to widen the circle of their feelings of responsibility towards other people, maybe not right away for the whole humanity or the world, but, in a slow manner, first starting from feeling responsible for the fields of life or family.
As you said, first a person does this for a material gain, to settle down, to earn money for the family, etc. As that person's comprehension widens, some pangs of conscience that person may feel because of the things she or he did for the material gain. And when this conflict emerges strongly, some questioning emerges as well. What am I really doing? Why and for what am I doing this? And consequently, that person needs to change direction. To start questioning one's way of living, a person needs to see the automatisms she or he continues, needs to see the meaning she or he gives to the things in life. I worked more than a decade in the corporate world, and I observed many colleagues who reached that stage of questioning but chose to ignore their inner conflict by saying that they have to go on because of the tuition fees for their children's education, or because of their habitual way of living. However, their beings were rebelling against these choices, and this situation was reflected on their illnesses and troubles. Of course, among humans, there are many who noticed their selfish intentions behind their desires for more material gains, and by this understanding, they can become more content with what they have and can begin to work for the benefit of others. So, this forsaking our earthly cravings bit by bit becomes possible as we begin to see the consequences of our choices, and understand to where these lead us in life. In this sense, seeing the consequences of our deeds and actions, seeing the directions these orient us in life, at least getting some intuitions about these, are the preliminary work for the higher plans, for the plans of duty. And here, we come back to the fact that how important the world school is, and the divine order and the universe emphasizes this again and again. To be born into this world is not an easy feat. Organizing of all those systems that work without conflicting each other's will is only possible by an immense encompassment, and of course, we cannot see this encompassment. Just like the parable of Moses and Khidr, when seen from the world reality, the horrible and mean acts and events have a rational explanation only when seen from a higher perspective. And for us, going out of the world reality occurs with death. However, while we are living within that reality, we cannot see and understand these higher-level reasons. Before our birth, our perspective is like looking down from a skyscraper. When we look down, we see a road, and at which point it leads us to our aim. Yet, when we take the elevator to go down and see the road from the ground level, soon we see the potholes, pebbles, or even larger stones scattered along the road, and we ask why these obstacles? Yet, these are the necessities of the road leading us to our aim. So, when we choose the road, we become subject to its necessities. And how we walk that road defines the quality of our development. When necessary, by jumping over the potholes or walking around the larger rocks, or if we fell down into a pothole, by trying to get out of it, etc. These are the events within events as parts and stages of our progress, advancement, our development. We will read many examples like this in the further pages of the book.
Yes. In the third paragraph of this passage, we read this. Tests, trials, observations, experiences, all bitter and sweet feelings, complexes, various appearances of sanctions preached by religions such as heaven, hell, afterlife, etc., are orientated towards the purpose of preparing humans for the comprehension and consciousness of the great, cosmos-wide deeds which they are obliged to undertake in the universe. Also, in the previous pages of the book about how the human comprehension gets developed, we had read. Under the increasingly strengthening pressures of their intuitions of responsibility, mankind strives to complete the human stage as automatically or semi-comprehending, and for this, they go through hundreds of thousands of refining experiences in their human lives, by living through the ages. That is, humans have the chance to complete the human stage in an automatic or semi-comprehending manner, as a result of those 500 or 700 lifetimes lived in the world life. And these concepts mentioned in this passage, such as heaven, hell, afterlife, etc., are concepts that meet those needs of humans rather automatically and prepare them, maybe unbeknown to them, for passing to this higher realm. Because, by these concepts, humans are introduced to the reward mechanism, and humans grasp that they will reap what they sow. They begin to get intuitions about this fact. Causes and effects follow each other, they give birth to each other, and whatever they do in life, there will be a response. At first, by fearing of these consequences, later, because their conscience feels better when they observe the rules, humans unknowingly begin to abstain from the undesired acts and deeds, and begin to orient towards the preached commandments. They advance in this road toward the completion of this world school. And here, another expression strikes my attention in the last paragraph. To prepare themselves for the knowledge of duty and organization, discipline is one of the essential functions of the life of the world. I'd like to underline this concept of organization discipline. We need to internalize this. Why? Right now, all of us here created a mutual field, and each of us is contributing to this field. And none of our contributions is less or more than each other's. All of us is a part of this field. Eventually, this pandemic will end, we don't know when, but it will end. And after these lockdowns are over and done with, if there are friends among us that feel the need to be a part of an organization, I urge them to start harmonizing themselves with this discipline, so when we will be free to gather and work with other people, you can choose an organization to work for the betterment of a field of life in this world. Whichever attracts you, you can join an organization and gain the discipline of working with other people for a mutual aim. As we learn working together with others in an organization discipline, we can learn communal giving and taking, contributing and cooperating, and this will help us forsaking some parts of our selfish earthly cravings in a semi-comprehending manner.
As you mentioned heaven, hell, afterlife, etc. I remembered the book of Albert Pouchard, titled The Other World, its infinite possibilities, its spheres of beauty and joy. Albert Pouchard, after his death, makes a contact with his sister who is an automatic writing medium, and describes the images he sees in the afterlife to her. Pouchard tells that he met a woman that he knew from his last life. There is a door before this woman, and on the door, there is a sign, Door to Heaven. And this woman carries 2 large suitcases, and because she wants to carry these along, she can't manage to enter in no matter how much she tries. Pouchard asks the woman about the content of these suitcases, and the woman replies that they are full with the good deeds that will make me go to heaven. So, all of us, according to our reality and understanding, we do and act for reaching a target. It is like a carrot, and in order to reach this we always are in action. However, when we hold on to this target too tightly, instead of preparing us to pass this reality to a new one, these calculated or conditional actions and deeds hinder us. And when I read this example in this passage, a mother no longer has to promise a sweet before washing her child's head. In this sentence, the book sweetly describes the passing from one reality to another. Yes, at first the child needs to be coaxed for a bath, but after learning about the harmful microbes and bacteria, the child doesn't need persuasion anymore, because now the child understands the function of taking a bath. The child's experience and knowledge has increased, his reality is changed. And now, the child may become irritated if he doesn't take a bath. And we, as the whole humanity, passed through so many stages in the divine order, and the universe states that we are in the brink of the closing of a world cycle which lasted 70,000 years. And what happened during all those years? Our comprehensions changed in accordance with our realities. The scope of the carrots or sweets the divine order placed before us for cajoling us to move, to act, to increase the conscience and to display various appearances of conscientious acts have changed as well. And today, we see the examples of those changes. As we learn from Ken Wilber's integral theory, as humans move toward the levels of integral self and holistic self, their motivations are not material wealth for personal reasons anymore. We see the children of wealthy families leave their posts in family businesses and become activists on behalf of people in need or environmental causes, or choose simpler lifestyles. So, the world is full of the appearances of swiftly changing realities, and everything is activated all together. That is the reason of all those appearances of chaos. And here, in this series, together with our friends, we are trying to understand the order behind this chaos. In this sense, the divine order in the universe is all about both the understanding that chaos and also going beyond that chaos, and hence, realizing that reality leap and completing this hydrogen cosmos. Because of this last sentence is very important. I read, "Only the ones who have attained the aim as the result of this function, and who have embraced the obligation of the deeds they will do in universe, can sever their relations to the world." It means that we cannot leave the world before understanding our function, and this is not an easy feat.
Yes, humans certainly must develop those feelings of obligation and responsibility. It may be that we are aware of this or we are unaware of this, but within an innumerable variety of applications, we do this. I know a man, a very wealthy man, living in Adana, and he is a devout person who desires to be a better human being, and his feelings of responsibility are strong. Each weekend, he passes the border and goes to Syria with trucks full of necessary items and food he purchased and distributes these goods to refugees in the camps. He spends each weekend with them and comes back. And only a handful of people around him know about this. He feels bad if he cannot do this each weekend. If this man reads this book, he can say at least, "What is this nonsense about incarnation? but he doesn't need this, he is already in action, in application of taking responsibility, albeit automatically, for giving a helping hand, he feels this obligation for helping others in need. He already gained this feeling of responsibility and obligation. And he now says that I will continue like this from now on, this is what makes me happy. So, the knowledge we read in this last paragraph reminded me this person.
Yes, we see many examples. And these are for the all humankind, don't you think? These examples show us the points the rest of us can reach, the states the rest of us can be in. If I may use this trendy term, they are role models. Just like all those great initiates, prophets, trailblazers, social activists in human history who had showed that this can be done by their living, by their words. They showed that this is not an utopia. There are many uppermost points of realities that human can reach while living in this world. And we learn and progress by observing and looking up to these examples, as well. And we see here, in this passage, again that, the book connects it to the essential knowledge. And this also explains why this widening of comprehensions is a gradual process. Because all experiences we have during those 500 to 700 lifetimes need to be compared, accounted, and filtered before it becomes the essential knowledge of our beings. Only then, this widening of comprehension occurs, and as we will read in the further pages of this book, the being takes on duties in accordance with its comprehension or merit. All right, let's continue reading. We will now provide knowledge, briefly for the time being, about the activities of organizations which exhibit the technical ways of an immense universe mechanism. There are boundless deeds that are done in accordance with the necessities of the original principle governing universes and spirits. In the constitution of matter, in the distribution of influences to matter and beings, and in the proper utilization of these distributions, in the governance and supervision of the myriad developmental stages and evolutions of beings, in the effectuation of the innumerable manifestations of crude matter serving their evolutions, in short, in every mechanism of universe, there are innumerable deeds and services, of which each one is a managerial duty that beings are obliged to execute in accordance with their specialization capability. These obligations, in accordance with the sublime necessities of the original principle, are executed according to the degree of merit of the beings, and beings are accordingly entrusted with and taking on duties, according to the merit of the beings that have attained the sense and comprehension of duty. Groupings, staffing and organizations are constituted in the plans of duty, which are different from one another in regard to the degree and state of duty. These are spread out up to the unitary, as the regulators, supervisors, helpers of each other, and as orientated to the mutual purpose aimed at in the original principles. Among the deeds they will execute are innumerable activities such as serving the evolutions of beings in accordance with sublime necessities, preparing material milieus for them, assisting those still at the automatic stage. Organizations execute all these duties of theirs, as we have just explained, in accordance with the directives, which originate from the unitary and spread out downwards, in the order of organization. Thus, specializations of beings are involved in the plan of duty in myriad ways, their acquirement of merit for duty, and consequently, their groupings, organizings and systemizations around various duties occur under directives, sanctions and necessities of the original principle, under its light. Thus, the whole of this organization constitutes the technical side of the immense governance mechanism which is connected to the unitary, of universe advancing unfailingly for the evolution of spirits. Naturally, it is necessary to attain a complete comprehension, to arrive at a superhuman level to take on duties in such a sublime mechanism. Actually, the plan of duty begins only after the completion of the hydrogen stage. In order to give an idea about the organizations of duty, as much as needed for now, we would like to explain one of the activity mechanisms belonging to our world, which is smaller than a particle of universe within the immense universe organization, with the knowledge we have received from the administrator of a duty group in this field. The following sentences contain a sublime knowledge which has been given to our world for the first time, as deemed suitable by the sublime sources, by the administrator of a technical administration group, of a plan with duty of the order of world affairs. Material phenomena in the universe, which are the imperatives and necessities of the principles governing the universe, are the components allowing the evolutionary material and its observation in the universe. For the myriad needs of evolution, starting with the densest matter state to the subtlest matter state, endless transformations, deformations, and formations occur. These material changes are a result of the channel of directives and power of the beings in duty to the general management of the universe and by the activity and labor of the beings that have taken on duties in certain fields. Perpetual changes, which are the components of the technical content of the universe, are the works of a great number of beings in duty. However, those beings who consign these beings in duty, by increasingly ascending, attend the general responsibility and powers in the unitary. Now, by a directive I have just received, I will explain how the beings who become factors in the occurrence of certain changes, which prepare these, work. In accordance with sublime principles, a directive of a soon-to-be change regarding the need to be comes to us. After all, other groups with duty which supervise and detect the needs and functions for each evolving being of the universe, inform us about the degree of merit and requirement of these beings and the things needed to be done about them. That is, besides the sublime beings giving directives in parallel with the sublime principles, there are other groups with duty and give us complementary information about our activities as well. Let me give an example. Imagine a man living a worldly life. He needs a certain change, a certain material for his evolution. He either has acquired merit for it or, due to the necessity of his tests and trials, confusion, in short, his functional characteristics. The group which measures and grades this necessity and determines its time and disposition is another group. The assistance of this group to us is in preparing the characteristics, quantitative value, and timing, in short, all the details of the event that is to occur for that man which we are obliged to have. For example, if that man needs to get ill, the kind, the degree of severity or mildness, the length, the shortness, the means of treatment of the illness are indicated to us. Let me go into more detail. If there need to be aggravating reasons in this illness, issues such as sending that man to a place with insufficient means, misdiagnosis by the doctor who will treat it are given in full. Then, for that individual's evolutionary material in this state, if needed, several beings will work. One will prepare the organism, providing the activity of microbes in the organism. Another one will influence the mental state of the doctor in that certain moment as required. The fields of these technical activities have many branches, but I will list a few important ones. For example, connecting the psychological states of mankind to certain form patterns, and building local, social forms, and let me give a final example, governing the mediums, etc. There are a number of activity branches like these, which can be multiplied. Each is different from the others in quality and significance. Each works within their cadre, with their techniques. Each of these activity cadres is different from the others. For example, as the group which is obliged to execute the physical changes that occur in nature cannot govern mediums, the group governing mediums cannot execute the duty of the group that builds the social events. After all, the difference in their working grounds entails a difference in working techniques for all these groups. Those groups with technical duties utilize a great number of possibilities as they execute certain duties. These possibilities are greatly varied regarding their disposition. By the way, I will be unable to give you technical terms. 4. These powers and possibilities that are used are difficult and impossible to express and qualify with words. However, it will suffice to use terms which will express them in an approximate but most suitable way. Powers that are used are electromagnetic powers, mechanical powers, biological powers which are the result of many powers and cosmic powers. In order to generate these out of spatial possibilities, out of the energies of unconfined beings which have abandoned their bodies, out of the energies emanating from the beings at the higher realms, out of the powers of mankind, out of the powers of the embodied. Of course, they are unaware of this. There are many of these embodied ones in the world, such as mankind, animals, plants, etc. Thus, energies generated from all of these possibilities and sources, by reinforcing our energy and through the consignment of those beings in duty below us, bring out definite results. Disrupting an object's equilibrium, for example, managing the wind direction, because sometimes a hurricane that will occur in a certain place by consignment of winds to a certain direction is imperative for the evolution of certain persons, as well as in a local earthquake, bringing out the change in equilibrium which is necessary for the earthquake, etc. So, bringing out the necessary conditions for all of these accrues through the energies emanating from the sources I listed and through usage of those energies by beings in duty in definite and appropriate values and forms. Well, this is an intense passage.
Yes. In this passage, there are many points we must study and discuss. First of all, we need to know this: in our universe, the force of the original principle prevails the unitary, and these forces appear in our universe as the original necessities. Each and every occurrence in our universe is an appearance of this whole of necessities. That is, falling of a leaf from a tree branch, bleating of a lamb, a monstrous act of murder, or a compassionate hand reaching to the ones in need. In short, all occurrences that you may think of are nothing but the appearances of the original necessities within the milieu or setting we are living in. And the material occurrences or events within the universe are the necessities of the principles governing the universe, and these occurrences and events are nothing but influences. Let me read. Material phenomena in the universe, which are the imperatives and necessities of the principles governing the universe, are the components allowing the evolutionary material and its observation in the universe. In the further pages of the book, we will read about three main cadres in duty. One of these is the cadre of the original principle. Another one is the cadre of mechanisms of destiny. And the third one is the cadre of the mechanism of time. If our friends study this passage with attention and intuitively, they can easily understand that this knowledge comes from a plan related to the mechanism of time and mechanism of destiny. Now, in this passage we read, besides the sublime beings giving directives in parallel with the sublime principles. And there is another group. Let me see how it is described. The group which measures and grades this necessity and determines its time and disposition is another group. The assistance of this group to us is in preparing the characteristics, quantitative value, and timing, in short, all the details of the event that is to occur for that man which we are obliged to have. And this duty is executed by the group in the mechanism of destiny. And what kind of measuring and grading process is this? There is a being that needs to be directed to an event, something will happen to this being. Why this needs to happen to this being is determined by the necessities to which the beings in the cadre of the original principle are adapted to. And how this event will happen is determined by the group in the mechanism of destiny. Will it be weak? Moderate? Intense? And from which way the being will get a better result from this way of occurrence. So, the result of this measuring and grading process done by this second group is conveyed to the third group, that is, the cadre of the time mechanism. And upon this, all details of the event that will happen to that being are given. And the cadre of the time mechanism brings all those details together in a way we cannot even describe with words, and synchronize these things need to be coincidentally. Then happens innumerable events. Two people meet. A car runs into a person. A natural event occurs. Etc., etc. Again, in this passage we read, There are a number of activity branches like these, which can be multiplied. Each is different from the others in quality and significance. Each works within their cadre, with their techniques. Each of these activity cadres is different from the others. We can easily conclude that the symbols or passages about the archangels and angels in the religious texts actually talk about such activity cadres. For example, the group which is obliged to execute the physical changes that occur in nature is named as Michael in the religious books. Or, the group governing mediums is named as Gabriel. And if we ask how these effects are provided, we can consider magnetic fields wherever we read energy in this passage. Because we know that all interactions among matter occur by the influences. Yes, I think, that's all I can say about the points in this passage.
In this passage, there is an interesting point. As you know, the divine order and the universe is compiled by Mr. Ruhselman from the spiritual communiqués given through a medium, and these spiritual communiqués given by a plan, a system in duty. And as this plan was giving knowledge, saying that if needed, these different organizations cooperate, inform each other etc., the administrator of a technical administration group, of a plan with duty of the order of world affairs comes forth and shares knowledge. And, in this passage, there is this example of chain of events leading to a result. A surgeon makes a mistake during an operation, and we read here that innumerable factors are influenced by the organizer systems until that surgeon makes that mistake, and even the intended results following this mistake is measured and graded by the organizer systems. Nothing is arbitrary.
Yes. Another point here we need to underline is, this technical administration group gives a list of the powers and possibilities they use for executing these events. What are these? Powers of mankind, that is, magnetic fields of humans, powers of the embodied. Let me read. There are many of these embodied ones in the world, such as mankind, animals, plants, etc. In short, energies generated from all of these possibilities and sources. So, as matter gets more complex, the influences it sends out becomes complex and encompassing in ratio. Therefore, the magnetic field of a human being can be gathered by the beings in duty and directed and transferred towards certain points for executing a given duty. In that sense, the magnetic field we build, emotional and mental forms we build are not only important for us, whether we notice or don't, these are directed and utilized by various beings in duty for various duties. And for individuals who can understand this knowledge, this gives more responsibility and obligations. I mean, the magnetic fields we build are gathered with the similar magnetic fields of other beings at a point in the universe and processed there. This can be negative or positive. Here, it becomes obvious that our responsibility for building our magnetic fields in a certain direction gives us more responsibility.
Yes, at the depths of the meanings we glean from this passage, we certainly find our responsibility. And here, we read about how a technical cadre manages the wind direction or trigger a local earthquake, and these duties are executed by taking account of the destined situations of the human beings in the intended way. And as these cadres execute their duties, we live and encounter myriad events. And the mechanism of events emerges with this conjunction of these three mechanisms: destiny, time and space, or location. And what strikes my attention most in this passage is that as the plan lists the powers and possibilities that they utilize for executing their duties, they mention the energies of unconfined beings which have abandoned their bodies. In the further pages of the book, we will read the mechanism of obsession, and how the cadres of duty utilize these influences of disembodied beings. And if we consider that each of us has a guiding being, that are at the initial steps of the plan of duty and they are sending influences to us all the time, and they receive influences from the beings in duty at the higher levels of the plan of duty. But when we try to imagine this immense inter-influence network, descriptions like below or above becomes insufficient. This has permeated the whole universe, and each of us receives the influence measured and graded in accordance with our need at a given moment. Fascinating. Mind-blowing. Something happens to us and we say, it was a coincidence or an accident. Then, if we can understand a few rings in the chain of cause and effect before and after that event, then we change our description of the event and say, wow, it was a synchronicity, no way, how things came together so perfectly at that moment. And, here, after reading this passage, we can understand that, if necessary, a stone is placed on our path, and if necessary, a stone is removed from our path. That is, everything we live and encounter is for a system established with the aim of developing us in accordance with our needs and at the same time, becoming the reflections of the evolution of spirits in this universe by reflecting back the essential knowledge our beings glean from our bodily experiences.
Yes, there are so many things we can discuss about this passage, but for this evening, this was what we could cover.
Let me thank you, dear Tümerhan, for your company in this series and for your contribution with your expertise, the clips and images you shared with us. Next week, a new commentator will join me, and we will continue reading and commenting on the divine order and the universe.
Thank you for inviting me to this series. I enjoyed this sharing with our dear friends. You are somewhere, I am here, our friends are in different places, but each week, we meet online and work, study, talk, write for the same purpose. We are around the same circle.
We didn't reply any questions this evening. Sometimes I glanced at the chat box to see if there were questions related to the topics that we read this evening. I see that there are many newcomers, and I kindly urge them to watch our previous videos. But, maybe, you'd like to reply to this question: what does the phrase great purposes mean? Are the great purposes different for each stage, each phase, each plan, each cadre of duty?
The phrase, our friend mentioned is in this sentence, I read. These deeds which are orientated to the realization of great purposes begin with several of such automatisms. What is the main purpose of the beings? To reach the unitary within the universe. Because when they reach the unitary, it means that they have acquires all knowledge, all experience related to the matter universe.
I think, great purposes of each stage is to get developed sufficiently to be able to pass to the next stage. And each stage or phase begins with automatisms and finish, at best, semi-comprehendingly. And we must underline that the phrase is great purposes, not the great purpose, so all those stages the spirits and the beings go through may have other purposes which we cannot know now. Yes, let me thank you for your attendance. Your contribution by writing your comments and questions is so valuable for us. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. Hoping to see you and to work with you again.